Okay, so this is, but he who knows the true character of the two distinctions of the soul, and from the modes of nature and their works, O mighty armed Arjun, understanding that it is the modes which are acting on the modes, does not get attached. So in this verse, we're going to discuss the modes. Some people might already be familiar with this concept, but when I first read this, I wasn't really sure about, what the word mode actually meant. But if we perceive it as qualities, it makes things clearer. So I'll go on to describe this. So in all works, Sri Krishna says that all works result from the three modes of nature. So you have goodness, passion, and dullness. Now, because of the ego, a person thinks that he himself is acting. But actually, this is sort of wasting one's time, and it will lead to one's downfall. Because, we've seen this before in the Gita as well, that we're not necessarily acting ourselves, and we shouldn't have the pride that it's us and the ego. We're just the means. So the reason for acting doesn't come from the person, but the actual modes of nature. So it's explaining to us that this is actually sort of not you acting, but your actual nature. Now, this can actually be just sort of demonstrated and described by way of an example, which is the building of a temple. Now, if there's a plan to build a beautiful temple and it's implemented so that the temple is then built, the temples was built with bricks, mortar, woods, metal, water, stone, cement, and lots of people's hard work. So you'll have this beautiful temple at the end, and in the Gita, we're trying here to explain the spiritual meaning behind this. So when the temple's built, and the temple's biggest owner say that it was because of his money or his donation, that's not necessarily true. Because, say, for example, the person who supervised the construction will say, oh, it's because I supervised it that this temple was built. Or because, the builder will say, oh, it's because I built it that it was built. And then the people in the town will say, look, this is, the temple that's built in our town. So everyone tries to believe that it's their own doing. But if you actually look at this from a spiritual and molecular context, then nobody really built the temple. Now, spiritualists will say this particular line, which says, Prakrute kurai karmani sarvasha kriyamanani. Now, basically, this means that it's all because the different qualities and all the different instruments and the materials that we use to build the temple had their very qualities. And it's only because these particular products had their qualities that they were actually used. So these qualities were combined, such as, tough metal, soft wood. These were used to make pillars, and then you've got stones which were used on the walls, and all these qualities were gathered in the right places, so that's why the temple was built. But if these qualities weren't there, the temple wouldn't have been able to be built. Say, for example, the stoneness in the stones wasn't there, or the wood quality in the wood wasn't there, or the sticky quality in the cement wasn't there, then, you wouldn't have had anything to stick the two bricks together. Why didn't you use flour, for example, instead of cement? Because, we choose cement because it has a quality of stickiness. So it's all based on the quality that the particular object has. So to reiterate this point, it's not the objects that are important, but the qualities. So it's only because those particular objects have those qualities that we use them, and that's how we put them together. So Guruji was told when he was young, a person is not dear, but his actions are dear. And he always remembered this saying because it's not necessarily the objects that are important, but the qualities. So a stone doesn't need to exercise to become strong. It is already strong. And wood's naturally soft, cement is naturally sticky. All the qualities are combined, and the temple was built. Now, we've considered these qualities of these objects for the building of the temple, but what about the efforts that the people put in to build the temple? Can they say that they built the temple or gave a donation to build it? No, because people can't really say this either, because you overlook, just like you look at the details of the objects that you've used, you should also look at the people in this way. And you see that a person came about because of his own qualities. The person wasn't necessarily important, but his quality was important. So the construction worker was called because he was able to build a temple and he knows how to put the instruments together. You call a carpenter because he knows how to use wood, and that was his quality. You call the building supervisor because he knows how to supervise the project. And he's able to, get together the construction workers to work more efficiently. And that's all down to what his qualities are. The person also who donated the money in order to build the temple was able to donate, and that's part of his quality. So if you look at this matter from the root, you see that it's the qualities that are the most important thing in an action. When anything happens in the world, you'll see it, that's the quality, or an even better word perhaps would be the tendency of that person, or that thing which works, and that's the thing that's important. So it's not you who's performed an act, but if you gave a donation, for example, of 100,000 rupees, then you can't say that you gave it because that would be incorrect. It's the quality of being able to donate in that particular instance that was your quality, not the fact that you donate everywhere. For example, if you chose to donate on this particular occasion, but you said no to 10 other places. And this actually must mean that there's a type of system in the world that gave you the inspiration to donate on that particular occasion. And it's because of that reason that the building of the temple took place. You became an occasion, and therefore you performed this act when you got inspiration from somewhere else. However, if you're still thinking that it's you who did this, then the Gita explains the reason why. Because this feeling then comes from the ego. Often we say, I did this, I achieved this deal, I bought this, I cooked this. But everything happens through the people and the objects because of their qualities or their tendencies. If you try to think about it intellectually, then you're never able to actually say that you performed the act. No human being can actually say they performed the act. And one who does so says so because of his ahankar, which is his ego. Ahankar means the ego, but the rest of the sentence, there's a phrase here which is ahankar viramud atma. Now, as I already said, ahankar means the ego, and the rest of the sentence means vi. Vi means special, and mur means unintelligent, and atma means soul. I'll just say that again. So vi means special, mur means unintelligent, and atma means soul. So there's a very famous example about a Moor in Sanskrit, and it's about somebody called Kalidas. Kalidas was actually a Moor at the beginning of his life because he was cutting a branch on the tree that he was sitting on, and everyone walked past him and said, well, what are you doing? And they started calling him a Moor, saying that, why are you doing this? And Kalidas asked everyone, look, why are you calling me this? And the person said, the reason why we're calling you this is because a person who successfully cuts off the branch where they're sitting will fall to the ground. And Kalidas didn't really understand, but the concept behind this is a Moor, or a foolish person, will always cut his own branch. He ruins himself, but in the process he doesn't actually know what he's doing is actually ruining him. So not only that, when he does a particular action that's ruining him, and he is successful, he thinks he's done a really good job. But he doesn't really understand that it's actually nearing his downfall. So the more he cuts the branch, and the more he's successful, the quicker he'll be finished, and his legs will break. He's basically cutting his own seat. These are the qualities of a Moor person. When he's successful in his stupidity, then he considers himself to be successful. And when he thinks he's actually accomplished something. And therefore, in this context, ahamkar viramud atma means a soul that is stuck in being especially unintelligent. Such a person always believes that he himself performs the action. So Sri Krishna is basically asking us to look at this verse also in a different context, and that means that when good qualities start to come to us naturally, then our ego won't stay. So if you have good qualities or good tendencies, automatically your ego will go away. So Sri Krishna is trying to say that if you try to make good tendencies a natural part of your life, then, the ego will go away. So a good example of this is the sun. The sun brings us light every single day, but the sun is not sort of egotistical or has any ego about the fact that it gives us light. It doesn't ever stop and think, oh, I'm really great because I shine light on everyone around the world. It's very nature and it's very quality and it's its natural work to shine light, and therefore in the same way, a person who gives a donation or somebody who serves food to somebody should give it naturally, because this is something that, is your inherent quality. If you therefore do any good act, you should do it naturally, just like the sun gives out light, because it's nature that's making you do this. The nature of actions is not to necessarily create bondage, and that's actually what Sri Krishna is trying to teach us in this verse. But a person that has this ahankar believes that he is actually acting himself. The nature of actions, again, is not to create bondage or to create more karmas for yourself. But when a human being thinks all these things, that, I'm doing this, he's starting to create more bondages and more attachment. You've actually sort of put the hat on yourself, seeing yourself as the performer of these actions, and you create bondage. And such a person creates actions through his own ego. And an action on its own, however, an action on its own can never actually lead to bondage. And that's what Sri Krishna is teaching us here, that a knowledgeable person is saved from his ego and his false attitude in thinking that he himself is performing the action. And when a person really begins to think about his nature and about the actions, he realizes that he's unnecessarily throwing himself in the middle. Everything that's happening, you're actually just the means. Everything that's happening is continuing to happen even if you're not there. Lots of people think that if they leave a company, then suddenly things will stop, but they won't. everything will rearrange and it will continue to happen just as if you were, you were there. You're just the means. Basically, Guruji says that the same goes for everything in life, whether it's happiness or sadness. The same goes for everything, and everything comes in a rhythm. People don't realise this after experiencing a lot of things because they don't necessarily consider this. But knowledgeable people realise that they are just the means. So now we've looked at, not trying to unsettle other people's minds and the way in which they think and the way in which we should act without having desires or bondages. So it makes people wonder, well, how should we perceive the world around us? What perspective should we use? And that question is answered in the next verse, where Guruji, Sri Krishna tells us that the perspective that somebody will see the world in. So we'll move on to verse 24.